Okay, so I just want to start by saying thank y'all so much to everyone who listened to the first two episodes since I've released the podcast last week. It's been so nice to see that quite a few people have listened. I honestly expected that, I don't know, 5 people would listen, and then I've actually was looking yesterday and I think we're up to maybe about 20. And I've even heard from some people that have reached out to me, which was so nice, saying that, they just resonated as well with some of the things that I was saying. And so, yeah, this is not necessarily about the numbers. This is just me having fun starting this new hobby. And it's just been nice to see, though, that a couple of people have listened and are interested. And that's exactly what this is for. And before even diving into today's episode, I just want to say I almost didn't even release this last week because it was Wednesday night last week. So I released on Thursday and it was Wednesday night, and I was just going through the final checking of that everything I had everything ready. And I was playing back the audio for the first episode, and there was no sound. There was nothing. I was like, oh my gosh. So I've been editing on DaVinci Resolve because then I can edit the audio and the video at the same time. It's on YouTube, by the way, in case anyone wants to watch. Please. I am doing the work for having the video too. But yeah, so it just got to the point where I went into DaVinci Resolve and the audio was just somehow gone. I could see the wavelengths, but I don't know what happened. And then I've been using ChatGPT to help me understand how to use DaVinci Resolve. I don't know if someone out there is listening and knows anything to do with sound, please help me, because I'm just chatting with Chat, and Chat was telling me oh, the bus and the stereo and the mixer, and I was just like, wow, this is all just over my head, and I couldn't end up even getting that audio back within the platform. And luckily I had saved the video with the audio attached, and so I could export the sound from that video. That was a very long-winded story. All just to say, this almost didn't happen, and let's see if it happens this week, because I'm worried about what's to come with the editing. I don't know what I was thinking with the kind of setup that I have. Well, I got it from the local Best Buy basically, and they said this was simple. I don't know what they were thinking because it's nowhere near simple. Anyways, so if anyone here is listening and you know about audio, feel free to reach out to me and give me a lesson, because we almost didn't make it happen. But we're here. We made it happen. And if you're listening to this, that means what I'm recording now worked, and we are doing episode 3. So, But enough of that. Let's get into the episode for today, which we're kind of shifting gears a bit, and we are talking about what no one tells you about moving abroad. And so my first experience with moving abroad was almost 10 years ago now, because it was January of 2016. So coming up on 10 years, I moved to Spain and I worked as an au pair. And for those of you who don't know, an au pair is basically a live-in nanny. And depending on the country that you're in, you might have different responsibilities. But I was primarily looking at becoming an au pair in Spain. And typically in Spain, it's a lot about teaching the kids English. So I had to take care of the kids after school. And then I also it was my job basically to just hang out with them in English, help them maybe with their English homework, sometimes take them to something that they had going on in town. And it was just a really good way for the kids to get exposure to a native speaker, as well as just cultural exposure. I hadn't actually heard of what an au pair was until 10 years ago, so fall of 2015. I had gone to the gym with my mom, and after class, I don't even really remember the full story of how this happened, but from my memory, what happened was that my mom was talking to some woman after class, and I was ready to go. And my mom was like, Mandy, come here, come listen to this. And she explained that this woman, her daughter was working as an au pair in Australia. And then that's when we really learned about what an au pair was and how that system worked and all of that. And she was just like, I think that you would really enjoy this. And so I actually got in touch with that woman's daughter and asked some questions and was like, wow, like I think that this would be a good way for me to get abroad. I was in my senior year of high school at that time. And so I was just, the way that my schedule worked out in my credits, I found out, well, I talked to my guidance counselor and found out that I could actually graduate early if I wanted to, and graduate in December of 2015. And then for that second semester, I was already done with school, so then I could just go abroad. I could talk a lot more about specifically what it is to be an au pair, but that's not what this episode is about, so I'm going to try not to go too far into that. Just one more quick funny thing, because I now find it very ironic, is whenever I was looking into where I was going to be an au pair, because it was very open in the fall, not really knowing where I was going to go, I was considering Spain for language reasons. I wanted to learn Spanish, but I was on this platform, Au Pair World, I think it's called, and a family from Finland actually reached out to me. I just remember this message so clearly because they painted just such a quaint picture of their life, and I never considered going to Finland, but I was pretty interested from that message. But I didn't end up moving forward with them or anything, just since I decided I really wanted to focus on learning Spanish. And in hindsight, thank goodness I didn't, because that would have been January, and I would have been miserable in January for my first time going to Finland. So good thing I didn't. And the ironic thing, obviously, is that now I'm living here, and I never would have imagined that when I had gotten that message from that family almost 10 years ago asking if I wanted to move to Finland, that, yeah, now I'm here living there 10 years later. But I won't go more into being an au pair and everything. I do think that, as I said, that could be a whole episode if there are questions on how to do that or what it was like or any part of my experience on that. But the main thing that I really want to pull from that story is just, that first experience of when I moved abroad and what I learned. And so one of the very first things I learned within a week is that I get homesick. And I had no idea that I got homesick because I had never left home long enough or far enough, I guess. I don't even think long enough. I don't think that I even went to an overnight summer camp or anything like that. Maybe just stayed at friends' houses longer, gone on vacation with them. But I never really felt like I was removed from my family in the way that I did whenever I moved in January 2016 as an 18-year-old to Spain. But looking back on that first week when I was just learning that I get homesick, that was the first time I was learning something about myself while being abroad. And that was just like the very beginning of it all. I had no idea that I would be back living abroad permanently now. And then that even after that time in Spain throughout college, that I would go back multiple times to various countries. So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today. We're just going to talk about some of the things that no one tells you about moving abroad. And I think that there are also going to be some parallels even if you haven't moved abroad. I think it'll also be relatable for any big leap in life. So moving cities, even within the country or within your state, or career changes and relationship changes. I think there will be similar themes throughout. So let's get into the unspoken truths of life abroad. The first being, it's not all magical, and that's okay. But let's talk about that. So I think it's really easy to think like you get to move abroad. That means you get to escape life. Things kind of pause, and then you will resume whenever you move back. I think I kind of covered some of that in the last episode. But life abroad does not mean you get to escape life. It just means you're rebuilding somewhere new. So life is still life. Yes, it's very charming when you first arrive somewhere, and even after 5 years it can still be super charming, of course. But life still becomes life. So it's really charming when you first arrive, everything's new, everything's exciting. You get to just like live and breathe and soak in that culture. There is nothing better than that. But an example that really sticks out to me is, so when I moved for the first time more permanently, rather than just like a couple of months here and there in summers in college, was in January 2020 when I moved to Prague to teach English, and I was going to be there, as you'll know, for 1 year. and which turned into more. But so January 2020, I mean, that was already just going to be tough because then we have March and 2020, and then it all goes from there. But yeah, I was experiencing it all, right? So I was experiencing like the highest highs. I've just graduated college. I've just moved abroad. Things are so good. Prague was just beautiful, a great place to be. And well, number one, I learned then I had seasonal depression because I moved there in January, and that was really tough. I had never experienced a real winter in my life until I moved there. So there was the winter reality, as well as then, I'm going through the visa process and trying to get a job. And then 2 months in, COVID happens. But there's this comment that sticks in my head from that time period. And that was talking with someone, don't even remember who it was. I just remember the feeling of being on the receiving end of, oh, poor you, you're stuck in Prague during COVID. And there's just such a disconnect of how it can look versus how it can feel to actually be somewhere new and experiencing it. So COVID was COVID, no matter if I was in Prague or no matter if I was in Texas. It sucked, right? And I'm sure many of you can relate. Wherever you were in life, it might have been an exciting time of life. It might have been your final semester of college. And so it's just when people look from the outside and say, oh, but you don't even have it that bad. And I think that can happen often when you're living abroad. And of course, that has to do with also your self-advertising. So if you're acting like you're living the best life, then people are going to assume that you are. But, there's still bad days. There's still laundry to do. There's still grocery lists. There's still the doctor's office that you need to figure out. And in a lot of ways, all of that is so amplified when you're abroad in a new environment. But you might get some of that thrown at you though, like, oh, poor you, like you're out there living your best life, like you're out there in like such a cool place and you're complaining. Like, you are allowed to complain though. Like, it's okay that your day sucked even though you're living in a beautiful city. It's okay that you had a terrible job interview even though you're in Paris or whatever it is, like just location doesn't take away the fact that everything that you're experiencing is real life. And I know that is not mind-blowing, that everything's not magical, but I think it's important just to keep that in mind, because also if you have that expectation that if I move somewhere new, wherever that would be, like everything will be okay, everything will be better, like no matter where you are, life is just always going to catch up to you. And of course, setting still changes a lot. I still think it's a very big difference to be experiencing something in a place you love versus in a place you don't love. So yes, it still does affect your experience. However, life is still life. You will still experience things that are tough to deal with, and that's okay. Just don't have expectations that everything is going to be perfect. Along these same lines of everything not being a magical and things just kind of hitting you, I think when you're abroad, there's a lot of learning experiences. And I have one in particular that makes me laugh because I think it was, I don't know, I had been in Prague for 1 or 2 weeks at this time, maybe 2 weeks. And I had gone to the grocery store and I needed body lotion. And I had gotten what I thought was body lotion. And before bed, I was like lathering myself up. And then I started to realize like, I'm actually like pretty sticky. What's going on? And then I used Google Translate and then I saw that I have just lathered myself in soap rather than body lotion. So that was a fun little learning experience, how to say lotion in Czech rather than soap. And also a good learning experience to just use Google Translate in the store. That's okay. And last point on this, on it's not all magical, and that's okay, is I think that you might experience similar feelings of when you land a dream job or move to your dream place, and then you slowly just start to see that life becomes life. The next truth of life abroad is that you will lose some things. And it might be a lot of things, just depends on your unique circumstances, but you will lose some things. You will also gain a lot in a lot of different ways, but it is inevitable that you are leaving something. You are going to be missing something. And so for me, that's just been loss of proximity to family and friends and missing milestones. And of course, just being in my environment as well, just that comfort of being home. My best friend had a baby in March and it's August and I haven't met the baby yet. And that just sucks. Of course, I've like FaceTimed her and him, like, but it's nothing like being able to hold your best friend's baby for the first time. And I guess when I meet him, he'll be, let me do some math here, 8 months old or 9 months old almost, which is, yeah, just kind of sad. I mean, I'm so glad I'm going to meet him before he turns 1. But yeah, that's just a fact of living abroad. Of course, there are some things you can do to hopefully mitigate some of that loss. So maybe going home more often if it's possible, or just more FaceTime dates, or there's things that you can do to make the loss smaller. But it is just a fact that moving far from home, whether that's abroad or whether that's to a different state or wherever it is, there is going to be loss involved in that. Some of that loss as well can just be broader than like physical being far from friends or family, and it can be emotional as well. So, for example, feeling lonely, feeling lost, not knowing where you're going, just these really, I think everything can be quite amplified when you're in an environment that is not known to you. Even if you've been there many years, it's still not where you grew up. There's still something underneath that's always going to be slightly different. And so, yeah, there is just this emotional loss. For me, I have sometimes this like fear of like, am I losing my personality? Looking back to who I was 6 years ago in Texas, I'm a different person now. And I don't know if that's a good thing or if that's a bad thing. Like, there's probably some really good things that I've lost of myself over the years. But then there's also some other parts of me that I'm like, have I lost how I express myself because I'm living in an uncomfortable, different environment? I mean, Finnish people communicate very differently than we do in Texas. I actually just shared an Instagram reel the other day where I was talking about how in Finland, it's really not common to meet your neighbors. And like you just smile at them in the hallway, this like terrible Finnish smile, sorry. And it's just kind of like an acknowledgement that they're there and that they exist. But after 2 years, I finally introduced myself to my neighbor. And these are some of the things that are like the worries, or not really worrisome, but the parts that maybe I start to rethink, like, oh, like, have I become too Finnish? Like in this way of like, am I not being true to who I am? Or am I just, this is who I am within this culture and that's okay. But the fact that I didn't introduce myself to some neighbors that I've seen like a million times until after 2 years is like not at all something that you would do in Texas. That would be super rude, actually. And so, yeah, there can be doubt. There can be doubt in case you didn't see that. But there can be doubt with who you're becoming and what you're surrounded by, and what I think that, yeah, it's kind of like I feel like you almost get more choice in a way of like, you see the different ways of being, right? Like the more you're exposed to different cultures and different people and different way of life, the more I feel like you have the opportunity to pick and choose what you want. And that can definitely cause some self-doubt, like, oh, what do I like better? Do I like it better how we do it in Texas? Or do I like it better how we do it in Finland? Or do I like it how we did it in Czech Republic? Or do I, so you kind of get this like, you kind of get to like build who you are in a certain way. But yeah, with that maybe comes a little bit of like stress on, am I becoming who I want to become? Oh gosh, that really took a turn there. Okay, but the going back to the topic at hand. So you will lose some things. Yes, you might lose yourself, as I've just come to realize. No, but on a less serious level, there's also just a lot of in-between logistics. Like that's definitely not talked about enough, is the amount of paperwork and pain that there is in bureaucracy. And actually, us Americans, the lucky ones, we get to do our American taxes no matter if we are a US resident or not, which if you're just a US resident, you might be like, well, yeah, that's actually a very weird thing. That is very uncommon. There's only 2 countries in the world, I can't even name the other actually, that require this of their citizens. Normally, the whole rest of the world operates that you do your taxes in whatever country you're residing in. But for Americans, doesn't matter if you're residing in the US or not, you have to do your taxes in the US. So it's just, it's just a lot of bureaucracy. It's so much. You have to do your stuff in the States. You have to do your stuff wherever you're living. So what will you lose here? You will lose your sanity. It can be a lot to deal with. Hopefully, usually after you've lived, 1 year in a place, you've kind of got your system down for how you're going to do it in that new place. So then you can hopefully just replicate year after year. But I mean, new stuff will always pop up. There's always bureaucracy to deal with, whether it's your local bureaucracy, it's visa processes, it's bank stuff here or stuff at home. And then getting back to the original, what will you lose? And for me, as I said, like the big thing is losing that proximity and closeness to friends and family. I wouldn't say closeness, hopefully, you'll agree, but proximity and closeness in terms of geography. But closeness and emotionally, I think that just takes a lot of effort to make sure that you are going to keep up the friendships and the family relationships that you want to. So it's just going to take effort, but you can make it happen for sure. I will not act like, you're going to lose everybody. Like, good luck. Like you might if you don't put in effort, but you can keep up relationships with those that you really want to keep up relationships with. And there's also just so much. I just mentioned like all of these things that you lose while being abroad or while living abroad, but you gain so much in return. I think obviously that's my opinion since I'm still here. But you just gain so much perspective, kind of just tying back into that idea that I was saying earlier of like picking and choosing what you want from whatever cultures and seeing how people do things. And you gain resilience and creativity and flexibility. And I think it's just you gain a lot of good life skills, I think. So you do gain a lot, but I just really wanted to call out that you do lose a lot. And I think that it just needs to be a conscious understanding that you will, like, it's just inevitable. Like, you will miss out on stuff. You are going to be losing out on a lot of things. And how are you going to balance that? Like, I think personally, everyone has their own way of doing that. Everyone has their own way of balancing that loss with what they're gaining and how to then, make up for what they're losing. So like, how often are you going to go home? How are you going to keep in touch with those friends? All of that. But yeah, I definitely did want to put that in today's episode because I really do think that is a very big part of who you are when you're abroad. And that takes me into my last point, which now that I'm looking at it, I do kind of think I've touched on a lot of this already. And that last point was just that it makes you grow in ways that I don't think much else can. Just the amount of navigating bureaucracy, the new cultural exposure, reinventing who you are or rediscovering or discovering for the first time who you are, learning things about your own needs. So my examples of like learning that I was homesick for the very first time. I didn't know I was homesick. I didn't know I could get homesick. That I get seasonal depression. I didn't know. You just learn a lot about your own needs, a lot about who you are, and the things that you need to be a functioning person in society. So you learn so much about who you are and your own needs. So I came up with a little list of like a few things I never thought I'd have to figure out while living abroad or in life. And that would be, well, taxes. Okay, I guess I knew I'd have to figure those out, but maybe the complexity of the multi-system, as I was just saying. How to go to the doctor. Like, this is a really funny one because you think it's like it's not something that you really think about when you're in an environment that there's not any mental effort into going to the doctor in terms of how does the doctor work. Okay, you might not like going to the doctor, but you know the system, and trying to learn that system from the very beginning can be really daunting. Another one that was just kind of silly is washing machines when they're not in your language. I mean, this is a really just a small thing, but it can be really confusing. Or here they say the degrees of the water, and I think at home like it's 30, 40, 60, and maybe I think 60 is the hottest. And yeah, at home it's just like cool, cold, warm, hot. And yeah, just small things like this. So I thought that maybe in the future I could actually do a full episode on just like on my list of things I never thought I'd have to figure out. But once you're living abroad, these are some things that you need to figure out. And then just to kind of wrap this point up on living abroad, making you grow in ways that not much else can, I just love that idea that it forces you to really live intentionally, and it really forces you to, just start to build your life and rebuild who you are. And you get to just pick and choose, hopefully, the best things from the various cultures and the various things that you've experienced while living abroad. So yeah, I think that was mostly what I wanted to say today. If I'm being completely honest, I'm not feeling super confident in the job that I've done here today. Sometimes talking is tough. It can be really hard to talk just like on my own, which is funny that I have my own podcast then. But let's go ahead and wrap this on up. I do fear that maybe I have skipped over some things that I really wanted to talk about and then gone too deep into some things that really aren't the focus. But, I'm learning how to do this. So yeah, bear with me as I learn the ropes of the solo podcasting. But just to wrap up, I clearly think that living abroad changes you. And I think there's so many good things about it. And there's also a lot of things that are tough about it. And so I think it's just good to talk about all sides of the experience. And no matter what happens, like you can't undo it. Once you've done it, like there's just no going back. Even if I move back to Texas next year, like I have fundamentally been changed by the experience, and I am so pro this. There's a million ways to do it. I can talk more on that later. I have looked up all of the ways to move abroad at this point, and there's just a lot of ways to do it. But yes, I do think it's so worth it. There's loss involved. Yes, it's real life, but it is such a good experience. And if you're in the middle of it right now, moving abroad or just building a life in a new place, I hope you know that it's okay to feel all of it. It's okay to love it. It's okay to hate it. And I think they're both totally valid and make sense. Like it's everything at once. It is such a altering experience to move somewhere and try to build from scratch. So if you made it this far after all of that, I would love to hear any thoughts that you've had. Just like last time, hearing from a few people was so nice. So yeah, I'm always welcome to hear that. My DMs are open. My Instagram is in the show description or the episode description. All of the episodes are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Hopefully they continue to be this week if everything technically works out again. And yeah, thank you all once again so much for tuning in to the first few episodes, and talk to you next week.